and a very warm welcome to this episode of Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. In today's rapidly evolving work environment, leaders are facing unique challenges, either driven by technological advancements, the rise of AI, and even the generational shifts. A recent World Economic Forum analysis projects that Gen Z will be accounting for overall 27% of the workforce by the year 2025. Now, considering this stat, the organizations must foster intergenerational collaborations and adapt leadership development strategies to stay relevant. So, to further understand the dynamics and managing a multi generational workforce and the impact of AI on leadership, we are excited to welcome our guest today, Mr. Srinivasa Addepalli, who is the founder and CEO of GlobalGyan Academy, a company funded by late Mr. Ratan Tata. A very warm welcome, Mr. Srinivasa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Great. Then, without delaying further, I'll straight away jump to my first question. So, what are some of the challenges that mid or senior level leaders are facing when it comes to managing this new generational force which is entering the workforce, the Gen Z employees?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge that many mid-level and senior professionals or leaders face, including people like me of my generation, face while engaging with younger Gen Z employees, is that we always have this thought in our mind that, this is how my life was, and therefore they should also replicate the way I lived. We as sometimes even as parents, we keep telling our children, now when I was your age, here's how I used to live my life. But we sometimes fail to recognize that today they're not living the life that we lived. Today the environment is different. There's been so much progress, and in a good way. There's been so much economic progress, particularly if you think about India, the kind of economic progress that has happened in the last 20 years has led to very different opportunities, a very different environment in which the young generation is growing up. The access to technology is so much different. There are also certain negative things, where our environment is not as safe as it was in the past. So much has changed. And therefore, as a senior person in the organization, for me to expect that my young employees are going to behave exactly the same way that I did when I joined my first job, I think is unreasonable actually. So the first challenge is for us to accept that the world is different, and therefore we must understand what they are going through, and see how we can help them adapt. Obviously they have to do certain things. Certain things don't go out of fashion. Putting hard work, for instance. I think that it's always going to be important. Being ethical and being respectful. There are certain values I think that one must encourage and instill. But at the same time, we must recognize that behaviors may be a bit different because of the environment is different. So I think that's the first challenge. The second equal challenge is which leads to the breakdown is also communication. I think methods of communication, even the language, the lingo that is used by young people, and what the jargon-filled language that we may use and the new jargon are very different. So again, do we make the effort to kind of go across the aisle and say, can I understand you? Can I spend some time listening to you? Maybe even learn some of your language. What does leaving me unread or leaving me read? All of these things mean, they're using this language. Do we know how to converse on WhatsApp and not through lengthy emails? So methods of communication, I think, is very crucial, because if there isn't communication, then how will we ever bridge the gap of working with these young people?
Definitely. And as you correctly said, their style, or say maybe the approach towards things is very different than the previous generations, or say the millennials. How can organizations build that intergenerational collaboration to actually bridge this generational gap between the seasoned professionals and the Gen Z workers who are new? Their style is different, the thought process, perceptions, everything is pretty different to what the existing professionals have right now.
Yeah. See, the first is again that generational gaps are not new. Okay, every time I think generations get created, this is true probably, and I'm sure the same conversation was being held in a certain way 50 years ago. However, I think the what has changed perhaps from the past is that generations have become shorter, which means that in the same organization or in the same team, we may have employees from multiple generations, which may not have been true. Maybe earlier there were only two generations. Now we may have a team that has four generations within the same team. Right? So therefore complexity has increased. And I think organizations must recognize and don't leave it to, oh, you know what, they'll figure it out themselves. I think they'll figure it out themselves is not going to happen. Organizations should kind of make a specific effort to help bridge this gap. And in fact, I see it not as a gap. I see this as a tremendous power. The fact that we have so many different types of people in the same team, brings so many opportunities for new ideas, innovation, etc. But don't first see this as a problem that will get resolved by itself. See this as an opportunity that must be leveraged. Right? So that's one shift that organizations and senior leaders or HR professionals who have this responsibility. The second thing that we must do is create opportunities for dialogue. Enable both sides to learn about each other. I don't think it is the responsibility of senior people to go and understand the language of Gen Z. I think even the young people have an equal responsibility to understand why their leaders are saying what they did. There is tremendous wisdom, right? There is tremendous wisdom that they have built over the years. I think that the key thing is, for instance, are we encouraging the creation of small project teams where by design people from multiple generations get together and learn from each other. And the other interesting thing that you could do, can you think about reverse mentoring? For instance, can we ask a young person in the team to teach something to a senior? For instance, it could be about how to use AI, how to use ChatGPT to write emails better. I'm sure a younger, person, or how to use Instagram to create a reel that you can use to promote your company. They're all small techniques. Why not? Why should you not learn these? Just because you are 50 years old doesn't mean that you should stop learning. So it also, I think, will build some humility for the senior people that there are so many things that I don't know that these young people know. I think it will bridge the gap much better. So reverse mentoring is, I think, a beautiful technique.
Definitely, and I think this is a wonderful approach, I would say, because as there's a saying that you should never stop learning. So considering as things are evolving, even the seasoned professionals need to come up with an open mind that it's okay to even learn certain things from the new generation also, because there's a lot of which is happening in terms of technology, and this new generation is more equipped using AI in various creative forms, which can be actually leveraged. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But and as you also mentioned about the AI and the technologies that are having, and I think it also puts a lot of pressure on the existing professionals, because they have to adjust with a lot right now, with the changing technology, with the changing workforce, and with this technology, AI is bringing a lot on their plate. So, what key skills should these senior or say mid-level employees need to focus to become more effective leaders in this AI work environment?
Yeah. And I think that's a burning question for a lot of people. There's a lot of fear, of course, that AI could take away a lot of jobs, and I do believe that a lot of very basic, repetitive, pure logic-oriented work can, of course, be done much better with AI. And therefore, I think the first thing that mid-level and senior professionals should do is not to be fearful or even dismissive of AI. Oh, all they say hota rehta hai. This is of no consequence. No, I think you have to recognize that it is one of the biggest things that has happened in the last. Of course, it's been worked on for many years, but in the last 12 to 24 months, I think so much has happened, and therefore, in the next 2 to 3 years, we could see dramatic changes. And first, you have to accept it, and therefore, then start to learn how can I use it. And instead of when you dismiss new things, you're gone, right? So I think the first step would be learn what you can do with it. just experiment with AI. I think is something that I would encourage everybody to do. Before then, they can think about how to use it in my business. How can I leverage it? Right? So just get comfortable with it rather than scared or dismissive. The second big shift I think that will happen is what can AI do very well? AI can do stuff that is based on past data and past knowledge. So wherever lots of data has to be analyzed, lots of knowledge has to be used to create something from the past, I think many of the learning models are very good at that. But what can't AI do well, at least as of now? No, yet maybe it'll change. But AI can't have a human connect. AI can't put your hand on the shoulder and understand what that person is going through, and provide compassion, provide inspiration. Okay, so
True.
AI can't do emotional stuff, right? I think therefore, am I building my emotional intelligence to work better with my colleagues or my customers, my vendors? Can I engage with them better? I think it's a capability. Emotional intelligence, yes, there are certain traits that many of us may have, but there's also methods and ways I can be more empathetic to my environment, to my people. I think that's a skill that we must build. Right? There's just one example. You could for instance, think about risk taking. You know, looking into the future and taking risk. AI can't take risk. A decision that is about taking risks of the future is ultimately a human responsibility. As a leader, you have to take decisions. So, how well can you take decisions? I think becomes a very crucial capability to build, because that's what you will be expected. All the analysis can come from AI, but ultimately you have to own the decision, own the risk that you are ready to take. So I think that's a wonderful capability. Finally, I think uh, there's this aspect of creativity, because again, while AI is doing a lot of creative stuff like drawing pictures and coming up with poems, but remember, AI is only looking into the past and recreating from what it has been taught. Okay, but I think at the heart, we are all creators, right? We are adventurers, we are explorers. Humans were meant to create. Okay, we do new things. For millennium, after millennium, we have done new things. So I think we all have to become far more creative, and doing new things, innovation, creating new things becomes our responsibility. And therefore, I would also again say creativity is not something that you're born with. Everybody is creative. We just forget that we are creative. So I would encourage everybody to build their capacity to be more creative, do new things. So these are the things that we should invest our time in, and leave the boring number crunching and so on to AI. Right? That's the way we should balance it out.
And definitely, this is a very valid and interesting point that you have mentioned that, whatever AI is doing, AI or Gen AI, it's all based on the past data that has already happened, or the data that has been fed in its processing system that is actually churning and learning. However, when we look at the human angle, we can see, we can take those in well-informed decision and can have bring more creativity on the table as compared to what AI can do. I think this is what even organizations are doing. That when it comes to even say the HR department, the L&D department, and there's a very interesting fact. This was one of the study that was being done by Strategic, and there the numbers really supported this thing that 36% of the organizations are actually using AI in their L&D programming. And it's really amazing to how you can do it. If you can just further delve further for our audience that how this integration of AI tool to this learning and development aspect is actually preparing the workforce more.
Yeah. And the way I think about it, it's not just AI. I think if you think about broader set of technologies, right, including any form of analytics, and the fact that today web-based technologies give us, or apps give us so much more opportunity to personalize. If you take all of that as a broader theme of how do I use technology to make learning better, okay? And I think one of the key things is that we all learn very differently. Each of us has a different style, method of learning. There are some, and each of us chooses a certain style of learning. Right? It's what we develop over our years. However, traditional L&D was that everybody went through the same learning in the corporate. No, everybody was given a certain training program, and you have to learn the same way. Which, of course, the way even a lot of our education system is, that everybody is tested on the same parameters, everybody is taught in the same way. I think the role of technology, I think the best role of technology would be to help personalize learning, and not just personalize the content, but also personalize the style, the learning method to the individual. And how can we do that? I think today creation of content or multiple formats of content with AI is much easier. So, for instance, if somebody likes to read and learn, somebody likes to listen and learn, somebody likes to do and learn. Okay. Now, can I create the same content in three different formats and make all the three available to that person in the same page? So instead of showing one video as the learning content, can I also have them go through a document version of it? Can I also create a simulation, a fun simulation that enables them to practice the same content but in through a doing method? Now I have created three different methods of learning for the same content, and I put all the three on the page, and I can choose what I want to do, and that's how I learn. And so for me, that's just a simple example of using the power of AI content creation. Because earlier, why didn't we do it? We didn't do it because it was expensive to get three different versions for every lesson. It's too expensive because it takes too much time.
Great. And as you mentioned that, earlier organizations were not exploring because of the cost factor. And I think cost as an aspect remains consistent whenever the kind of investment they are making or the decision they are making. And as they're investing in all these aspects of upskilling, the leadership, scaling themselves up, and all these development programs, so how are organizations measuring the impact, or say ROI, in all these investments for the overall employee performance?
Yeah, I think ROI of learning is a difficult question, but it's also an important question. I think everybody is asking that because there's a lot of investment that is going into this space. So I would like to break it into two parts. Right? Learning, which is functional in nature, which is to build simple skills, right? Known skills that are necessary to upgrade the performance of a person. I think those can be measured much easily. Outcomes can be seen. Was I able to do this, or now I'm able to do it? And if I'm able to do it, it'll get me better revenue. It'll save me time. It'll use less resources. So clearly, any skill that you build can immediately be measured in terms of the shift in skill level, and also therefore the return from it, because skill improvement results in some reduction of cost or improvement of time or whatever, right? The second type of programs or learning is where it becomes difficult, which are actually the soft skills, the so-called soft skills, which are hard to learn. Okay, they're actually the hard skills because they're very difficult to learn. The impact is not visible immediately. It takes a lot of time to learn those and to implement those, because you don't, it's not that tomorrow I will start making presentations to the board. But if I have learned how to make a presentation to the board, it has changed my way of thinking. It has improved my capability. And there, I do believe, in general, that learning is based on faith. Okay, it's based on the view that you have to believe in it. You have to believe that learning and development is useful and it must be done. And the measurement of it, for me, I think the best measure for me. But I think the biggest challenge that organizations face today is the ability to attract and retain talent. In spite of the fact there are lots of people available, but high quality talent is very difficult to attract and retain. And this is something that leaders keep telling me. I keep hearing this all the time. And therefore, my ability to promote internal talent by developing them through learning interventions, I think the most important outcome of learning, particularly leadership learning. So if I have a new role that comes up, am I able to fill it with a person from within the organization? Because attracting a new person is always going to be difficult. So I think the really long-term outcome, and I think successful organizations recognize that this is the only true metric. What percentage of my requirements or role requirements do I fill through in-house talent? And of course, retention of your top talent is another great metric, right? If you have identified X number of people as your preferred talent, are you able to retain them by giving them opportunities to grow, learn, etc.? That would be my
Okay.
way of measuring.
Great. And as we've discussed all these aspects in terms of measurement, the importance, everything. So, as per you, what are some of the best practices for ensuring that AI supports rather than replace the human aspects of leadership development?
See, I think uh, the role of AI for me is, again, like any technology, it has to support. I think the key thing in is designing development. The key goal of learning is to retain talent, is to develop them, make them ready for future growth, support the ambitions of the organization, and therefore a lot of leadership development is also now not just becoming, oh, let's do a one-day workshop or a one-day training program. It's really becoming a continuous process, which means that learning has to happen also on the job. They have to continuously learn even when there is no workshop or a training program. So I think the role of AI or technology for me is how do we integrate learning into daily my life daily. Right? Learning should not be a separate activity. Learning should be part of what I do as my job. But day-to-day integration, I think, is the most important part of it. There are learning platforms that organizations have implemented that enable it. I think there's still, I wouldn't say there's any truly best practice. I think a lot, this is where the work has to happen, of
Okay.
integrating learning into day-to-day operations.
And I would say this is one of the best practices. If it's been implemented, I'm sure the results will be fantastic for the individual as well as for the organization. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasa, for this really interesting discussion. And as we wrap up this enlightening episode of Digital Dialogues, it's very clear that as we navigate the generational diversity and the AI or say technology integration, that demands both strategy as well as empathy. And as we derive from our today's discussion, that leaders of the world or for the future are those who can bridge yesterday's wisdom with tomorrow's innovation. So, with that note and this message, we close our discussion for today. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, and keep leading with a purpose and insight. Until then, take care.